So now we are looking down on the valley. Right below us here is that archaeological site that I was talking about. Many of these areas are houses down below that were leading up to the temple. What we're going to go look at in a minute is some ritual baths. Down below us you'll see this is the original city of David, that where some of those houses are, which was a very small city originally. And you can see, of course, to the left, once again, the Mount of Olives. So let's go take a look at these ritual baths. So right down here we have what would have been a ritual bath for cleansing, because of course as we showed you, are at the foot of the steps into the temple, and of course anyone entering the temple had to be ritually clean. And so there was a walkway, there's a little divider which you might not be able to see from here, but it was, you walked in one way and out another way. You can see almost what looks like a almost cauldron or a tub that they must have had some other elements in, but they would go into this bath and they would cleanse themselves so they could be ritually clean, and as they walked back up they were not allowed to touch those that were walking down to stay clean. What a beautiful city this is. Beautiful walls, palm branches. And I just wanted to share with you again some revelation I had while I was here. You know, this is so beautiful. Everywhere we go, we think about the beauty of how God has restored Jerusalem. And I spoke earlier about how it was in ruins less than 100 years ago. But throughout the years, Jerusalem has changed hands many times. And now there's a very interesting climate here. Is in one quarter area you have the Muslims, and you have the Jewish people, you have the Armenians, and you have the Christians, and they do seem to be living reasonably at peace together, which is quite amazing. But you know, I think about it as we're going to get later into our teaching into Ezra 9 and 10, it talks about how God was mad that they had intermingled and with their marriages they had married people from the land. And throughout the Bible there's many times where God says utterly destroy those that are not the Jewish people, or destroy those people in the land. And sometimes I know as Christians we can wonder why God would be so cruel to say utterly destroy, do not compromise with the nations. And it wasn't just about serving their gods. He says do not compromise at all. And something hit me as we looked up at this Temple Mount the other day. We had not been able to go there because in year 2000, I believe it was, in order to keep peace, Israel offered the Muslims the Temple Mount, because they wanted to keep peace. And we talk a lot about keeping peace, and we know that that's important. We also know that it's going to be a sign, though, of the Antichrist, is keeping peace. And I'm not saying peace is bad, but I want to show you what has happened because of keeping peace. Because the Israelis desired to keep peace. They said, you may have this land, you may have the Temple Mount so that we can share it. But when the Muslims took control of it after a time, they began to limit the time that other people had. And now the time is very limited, an hour or two a day. Can anyone other than a Muslim go there? And for a few years, nobody else was allowed to go there. And you look, and on our Temple Mount, that precious site that we've talked so much about, the Christians and the Jews cannot go there because there is a mosque there. There are several temples that are dedicated to Islam. And it makes me understand why God has said, do not compromise with the nations, because in compromising, we can lose everything. And it seemed like a simple compromise. It seemed like something to keep peace, but in doing that, they lost their standing, they lost their footing, and now have no rights at all to the Temple Mount that God had rightfully given them. My friends, we have to be careful, like we talked about in Ezra 2, to be loving, to love our neighbors as ourselves, but to not compromise, to walk that line, not frightfully in fear, but to walk it in such a way that we will not lose our footing, that we will not lose our Temple Mount. Our temple, of course, that is us. We talked again about, like I said in Ezra 2, those priests that had compromised and had married the women of the land, and their names were no longer found in the book of the priest. They had lost their calling. They had lost their purpose. They had lost what God had preordained for them to do because of compromise. And I, once again, just look up there and I think of what was lost due to compromise. and we know we will get it back because we know that Jesus is going to land on the Mount of Olives and is going to split the eastern gate open. And I wish we could show that to you because the eastern gate is actually sealed shut. No man could go through that gate except the Messiah. So we know that it will be restored. All things will be restored. But we also know that we cannot be careless with our walk. Our God is a loving God and calls us to love. But we must be holy as He is holy. I love you all and wish you all were here with us. God bless you.